Okay, we're back to Simon Armitage now, and the poem Give. This time he's in character, the character of a homeless person. You'll notice right away the lines are really pared back, and the language is quite simple in this poem. An important piece of advice for reading poems is to look at the shape of a poem. It gives you clues to how it should be read. This is a pared back poem, it's simplistic, it's small. The line is short if you compare it with a poem like Sing Song, for example. In poetry, more is not more. Bigger poems are not necessarily more complex. Uh, Sometimes the most complex poem, especially I'm thinking of Chinese and Japanese poetry, can be a poem of 3 or 4 lines. Poems are compressed language, compressed musical language. And sometimes when you look at a very minimalist poem, like the poetry of China, you can learn a lot more because you read every word so carefully. Each word counts. But you have to remember also with these kind of poems, you don't read words in isolation. You have to think of them in the units. And by units, I may mean something like the line. I may mean to the punctuation mark, be that to the comma or to the full stop. It could be to the stanza, so the stanza is a unit of thought. To the image or the rhyme. Sometimes couplets or rhyme sequences or soundscapes are their own real unit of thought. Sometimes an idea comes up in a poem, and that's a unit of thought as well. With a poem that's so tight and pulled back as this, you really have to look for the gaps. What isn't being told us? So with this poem, I really want us to think, because in the previous Armitage poem, we had someone looking at a clown punk. Here, we're in character. It's a homeless person speaking. But there is still the poet behind this presentation of character, and I still like you to consider, how does the poet feel about this character? Can he have more than one opinion? Are there multiple visions, even in such a small poem? Does the speaker know the person he's addressing, the homeless person? Of all the, if they're speaking to someone, is it a stranger? Is it the reader? Is the person romantic? How did he get this way? Is he homeless? Is there any vision we can get of his origins? Do we think he actually gets a lot of money doing this, saying these kinds of things he says here? Now, you may come to me and say, well, look, there is not enough evidence for a lot of these ideas in this poem. And I would come back to you and I would say, the more you read poetry, the more you'll be able to read the silences and the gaps as well as what's present. And that your imaginative speculation on what's going on is you creating the meaning in the poem. Now, ultimately, my object in reading poems is to get, hopefully, not only for you to enjoy yourself, but to write your own poems, to perform the poems, to think about how the poem changes the way you might live and think about the world. Sometimes you may not know, but your suspicion pulls you in a different direction. I think with this poem, there's a lot of different possibilities, and the multiple possibilities keep it being something that I want to keep reading and I'm interested in. Give by Simon Armitage. Of all the public places, dear, to make a scene, I've chosen here. Of all the doorways in the world to choose to sleep, I've chosen yours. I'm on the street, under the stars. For coppers I can dance or sing. For silver, swallow swords, eat fire. For gold, escape from locks and chains. It's not as if I'm holding out for frankincense or myrrh. Just change. You give me tea. That's big of you. I'm on my knees. I beg of you. Okay, the poem is called Give, and it's in the voice of someone who is homeless and sleeps in the street and in doorways, and he's accosted someone or addressing someone personally and saying, you know, he's in his way, in their way, and he isn't solely miserable about being on the street. He Yes, he's sleeping on the street and in doorways, but he's also, sleeping under the stars. He's looking for some money, and he can do all sorts of performances, and he almost vaudevillian performances, and it's it's not like he wants something very valuable. He just wants some change, and that phrase, "just change," sticks out in this poem, line 10, and we'll come back to that in the close reading. The imaginary person that he's speaking to apparently gives him some tea, and the speaker says, basically acknowledges the gift, but remains at the end of the poem on their knees, begging. And that word beg also sticks out in the final line, essentially kind of the core of what it means might be going on here. And I think that begs counterposes with the title give, and they sit at two opposite ends of the poem. And again, it's worth thinking about what that means.